5, 6, 7, 8.
Welcome to the EX podcast, where I talk with business leaders, authors, and disruptors on how the workplace is changing. The podcast brings a different lens to the conversation around HR transformation, company culture, and employee engagement. It provides a brand and customer experience perspective rather than a traditional HR perspective. Why? Because companies have to think of themselves as employment brands if they hope to attract and retain talents. It is time we put people first to rehumanize the workplace, simply because leaders who don't care about their employees will eventually be surrounded by people who don't care about their business. Today's guest is Wiktor Schmidt, CEO and co-founder of Netguru. Wiktor is fascinating and has great anecdotes about building a unique, remote-first company culture. Here are a few topics we discuss on this episode. How to rapidly grow a company to 600 people with a remote-first approach. And what is the difference between remote-first, remote-okay, and remote-friendly? How to keep employees happy with the philosophy of Org Culture 4.0, empowerment, trust, partnership, and transparency. Wiktor purposefully changes his role as CEO every quarter, and how changing executive roles can lead to a more successful internal culture. Why Wiktor believes the major organizations should prioritize recruiting engineers over MBAs. And finally, how he sees talent acquisition in the next 5 years. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Wiktor. And because it takes a good amount of time to produce this podcast, please make sure to review the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, or YouTube, as it will help promote the content. If you want me to speak at your next event, get some advice on your EX initiatives, or send me feedback and suggestions for future topics or guests, you can reach me at svincent@exsummit.com or on Twitter at @EX_summit. All right, let's get to it. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the EX podcast. Super excited for today's guest, Wiktor Schmidt. Wiktor is calling from LA today, but he is based in Poznan in Poland. And he's the co-founder and CEO of Netguru, one of the fastest growing software consultancies in the world, skyrocketing from 30 to 500 employees. They've done it all remotely, servicing over 290 clients across 16 time zones, with yearly growth of nearly 100% since 2013. Wiktor, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
You may be a bit jet-lagged today, since you're in a few time zones away from Poland.
No, I actually arrived on Sunday, so I'm getting used to this time zone now. So it's getting better.
All right. Well, before we dive into some of the very interesting questions I have for you, let's talk a bit more about your background and what Netguru does.
Sure. Yeah. So we started this business 11 years ago, and as you said, we're kind of software development consultancy business. So we help startups and corporates build digital products. We have close to 600 people on board, working with both kind of early stage startups that we hope are going to be the next big thing, and also like corporates where clients like Volkswagen, IKEA come to us. They want to be a little more like a startup, so we can help them innovate, help them build digital products in a way that kind of has been used by startups for a little while now. So we kind of help them on the consulting side, and then also on the delivery, building those kind of startup products, projects that they have in mind.
Okay, and what is your background and how did you get to where you are today at Netguru?
Sure. Yeah. So my background is in technology. Myself, my co-founder, were always very much kind of excited and interested in technology and the internet. Back 11 years ago, it wasn't 100% obvious that this is going to be this big. But we kind of were quite excited about all the technological possibilities that come with the cloud and mobile technologies. So we did some kind of freelance work ourselves, and then we started working together, and kind of very organically grew the company to after 11 years to 6-7 people. But it's been very organic growth over those years.
Good. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, you've been through a quick growth with an almost entirely remote team. How do you rapidly grow a company to about 600 people with a remote first approach? And what's the difference between remote first, remote okay, and remote friendly cultures?
Right. So I would say there's probably another remote X, which would be remote only. So we are remote first, which means that we have offices. So we have offices in 7 different cities around Poland, and everybody is kind of welcome to come to the office. A lot of people, I would say, probably half of the team visited the office regularly, or at least a few times a week. But we're also absolutely comfortable and absolutely okay with people working remotely whenever they please. So I, for example, I try to get into the office every time I'm in our headquarters. I'll probably be in the office unless there's something I have to take care of, kind of in outside of work. And then obviously when I travel, I work remotely like I do right now. But a lot of people would choose to come to the office every 3 days, or 3 days a week. Some people would choose not to come to the office at all, and some people are kind of located also outside of the cities where we have the offices, so they will kind of work remotely 100%. So it's something that we really believe in, because I realized very early on that I'm completely comfortable working 100% remote, but people kind of appreciate this opportunity to be able to connect with their and have some of the face time that they feel like they need on a more regular basis. So this was something that kind of helped us grow the company. So the question was how would we grow the company? I think a lot of people appreciate this opportunity to be able to both work from home when they want to, or when they have some other stuff that they need to do somewhere in between, and have this flexibility of also come into the office and have a more kind of social way to connect with their coworkers, and kind of work maybe in the same room for a little while, and then go and work somewhere else. So I think this was when we talk to the people who can apply to work with us, they definitely say that this is one of the big advantages of this opportunity, is that they have this flexibility of being able to work from home and work from the office.
So how do you call, or how do you see the difference between remote first, remote okay, and remote friendly? Is it a different, all these different concepts, or are very similar, just a different name?
So there's remote only, which means there's no offices. So you're kind of forced to work from home or from a co-working space, and you communicate with your coworkers over Zoom, like we do right now, Hangout, Skype, whatever. Remote first is something that I kind of described, which basically means that you're flexible. And then you mentioned remote okay, remote friendly. I think those are a little bit of a kind of dangerous concepts, because what we found is that unless the whole organization is kind of comfortable and used to working with folks who are not in the office currently, so who are kind of working remotely, it can sometimes cause some problems. So we like to think that whenever there's a meeting, whenever there is something where we want to connect, we want to have a meeting about, we always think about this meeting as if it was a remote a remote meeting. So if somebody's in the same office, they'll obviously come and sit in the same room. But we kind of understand that some people wouldn't be, and then it has an influence on how we run those meetings, because we know that we have to have a paper trail. We know that we need to have an agenda. We need to know, how we're going to document the outcome of the meeting. So it's not possible to be able to do those water cooler conversations and not have some kind of a follow up after that. So people who are not present physically have also access to this information. So those remote friendly and remote okay concepts, I think, are tricky. And I think you have to be very conscious about the fact that it's very, very easy to exclude people who are not physically in the office. If like majority of the team is in the office and there's just a few people who are not working from the office, it's very easy to kind of exclude them from some conversations. And it can be very dangerous. And it can be something that kind of then makes the organization question if kind of the remote setup is something that they could be, what they could work with. And we've probably all heard the story about Yahoo during the recent years when they actually cut the remote work program. And I obviously don't know the details, but I would imagine that one of the reasons was that that the culture was created in a way that there was an expectation that you would kind of have those unofficial water cooler conversations, and that's where some of the information was being distributed. And they didn't have this mindset of kind of documenting maybe some of the conversation or having this kind of remote first approach to culture.
There are some advantages from an employer perspective to develop a remote first culture. You don't have to invest as much in a physical office space. You can actually go where the talent is instead of trying to find okay employees but not the best ones locally, or you have to account for relocation packages, for instance. So there are some advantages of working with a remote workforce. At the same time, there are some challenges, such as how do you find the people actually who have the right skills and the right mindsets to be able to work completely remotely? And also, how do you keep them engaged and accountable for their production or their productivity when you can't monitor what they do like you would do with people in the office? What are some of the challenges that you've seen and some of the solutions that you've put in place so that you can not only get the right people in place, but also keep them engaged and highly accountable for their productivity and contribution to the company?
Right. So there's a few parts to this question. I think there's definitely a lot of advantages, and I think my personal view is that I don't really look at the cost structure as being the kind of the major factor of us wanting to be a remote first organization. I think for me it's much more on the other part, which is the access to the best talent that you can have without really having to focus only on some major cities or even like your own kind of a headquarters. So I think this is the main reason why we want to go this way, is that we can have access to much larger talent pool. Even if you're just considering your own country or your own time zone, it tremendously broadens your access to talent. And I think this is the biggest advantage. Talking about kind of engaging and keeping the workforce accountable, I'm always very hesitant to even make this distinction. I don't believe there's anything specific that you have to do in a remote company to keep people accountable to the goals, KPIs, or to whatever framework you're using for kind of keeping track of what's happening in the organization. I think every organization should have those metrics, those KPIs. Mm-hmm. And if the only way you think you can keep people engaged and motivated and accountable to the goals is by being able to look over their shoulders, I think there's something much more broken with the culture than only the fact that the company is either remote or not. I think this is not the way to think about engagement and accountability. I think there's a lot of stuff that we do around this kind of a more social engagement. So keeping people motivated is part of this kind of psychological connection to their coworkers, to their team, and we definitely spend a lot of time thinking about that. But I'm not at all concerned about accountability and kind of oversight over what people are doing on a kind of a daily basis. I don't think it's something that I should be concerned about, especially in the relation in having somebody working remotely or not.
How do you keep employees happy and engaged with what you call the philosophy of org culture 4.0, which is empowerment, trust, partnership, and transparency?
Yeah, so I think those are the main kind of foundations for having a great culture. Again, regardless of this being a remote or another remote company. So we try to make sure that the team understands and that we kind of communicate it and it is somehow within our culture that we trust each other, for example. So so that this is really what I was talking about in terms of kind of monitoring somebody's work. We don't really need to do that because we trust and we can work together toward the common goal, and we trust that people will be kind of aligned in the same direction and they'll be trying their best to accomplish the goals that we have put in place. So all those high level values that you've mentioned are something that I think are a huge base for being able to build a successful organization. Again, regardless of this being a remote or not remote setup.
For companies that are much more traditional and that don't really embrace the idea of having any remote employees, the perception is it's almost impossible to have a culture of collaboration when employees are not together. With your remote first workforce, how do you build that culture of collaboration? And what is interesting too in the software or tech space, there's obviously some work that happens in teams, especially on the product development side. But so can you explain us what are some of the frames that you put in place, some of the processes that you put in place to make sure that there is collaboration between different teams from different locations and even different time zones, because this might be challenging as well when people are working at different times of the day and find common times where you can actually get people to work together.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So I think whenever we talk about remote organizations, I think we always have to keep in mind that being remote doesn't mean that you're not allowed to meet face to face, or they're not even encouraged to do that. I think what we found is that having this FaceTime on a regular basis, and I would say somewhere in between once a week to maybe once every 2 months is tremendously important to keep to build trust. Being able to build trust and build some kind of intimacy, I think it's crucial to be able to meet in person and have this kind of physical connection, physical contacts, face-to-face time from time to time. Like being a remote company doesn't mean we never ever meet. I think working within teams, we definitely encourage the teams to meet from time to time, spend some time together, in a work environment or maybe some kind of a more social environment. I think this is crucial. But then what happens on a more day-to-day basis, I don't think you need to have the kind of physical connection, during the work hours all the time to be able to collaborate successfully. So we definitely use a lot of tools. We are constantly on Slack. We use video conferencing. We do obviously use a lot of project management tools and collaboration tools to collaborate on documents, on designs, on whatever or code, obviously. So I think there's an element of this building, this kind of human connection, human trust, where this face-to-face physical contact is important, but it doesn't have to be all the time. It can be spaced out every week or every few weeks, and then we have this moment where you actually have to collaborate, where it's even sometimes when we sit together in the same room, we would use some of those tools rather than using pen and paper or like the whiteboard, because those tools are so good and so kind of helps with productivity that they're actually sometimes even better than having this physical collaboration environment. So I would say that it doesn't have to be an obstacle to collaboration. The time zone, I think, is definitely something that is a challenge because a lot of people talk about asynchronous work, but I do believe that having this real time collaboration is something that's hard to skip in a more creative tasks and projects.
And what is interesting with working across different time zones is, first of all, team work doesn't happen. Let's say if you work 8, 9, 10 hours a day, it doesn't happen all through the day. You have to, you have some team hours and you have some individual hours when you work. And the good thing with working across different time zones is you can easily find 2 or 3 hours of collaborative work, and then the rest of the time, wherever those employees are, they can actually work on their individual tasks. So those are not incompatible. It's actually even probably more compatible because you can work pretty much around the clock, 24 hours a day, making sure that you find maybe 2 or 3 hours of collaboration, and then the rest is individual work.
Yeah, I think people tend to try to find advantages of being across time zones. I don't think you can. I think it is always a challenge. I don't think you can try to find those advantages, but I think in general there is some kind of additional productivity needed when you're not in the same time zone. You have to be more structured about the time that you spend together. Like you have to kind of cherish it a little bit more because it's limited. And if you go anywhere over 8 hours of time difference, like it's just somebody would have to be a little bit more. Somebody would have to make some sacrifices probably over the kind of traditional 9 to 5 work time. So somebody would have to stay a little bit longer. Somebody would have to come in a little bit earlier. So I think it's hard to say that working across time zones has advantages. I think it's always a challenge, but I think you can work around it, and you can still be very productive if you want to put in this additional productivity, and if you think like that the folks that you're working with are smart and you're working together as a team. I think you can work around those.
Why do you purposefully change your role as CEO every quarter, and how changing executive roles can lead to a more successful internal culture?
Well, I think so. I wouldn't say it's purposely. I think it's just the way we grow and the pace in which we change as an organization kind of forces me to change as well as a leader, I think. And then it kind of happens throughout the organization. I don't think I'm the only one who has to change. I think every single person in the organization has seen that we change, and then there's a lot of stuff that has changed also in their own roles. So I think this is again just something that happens in a fast-growing organization, is that there's a constant struggle to reinvent ourselves and to evolve, both the things that we do, but also our culture and how we approach certain things. So for me, it was a a big challenge, and still, constantly is a big challenge as we grow from, 100 people to 300 people, and then from 300 people to 600 people. And then as we continue to grow, in terms of the size of the team, it's going to be a constant kind of evolution of what we do. And I think what helped us a lot in this is that very early on, one thing that we've done was kind of emphasize that we are a remote company, but also the other thing that we emphasize that we are a company that's going to change. So we have this kind of internal, informal motto inside that the only constant is change. And it's really something that we've seen in the organization that people were kind of, they repeat this from time to time, is that they really see everything changes. And it doesn't really have to be even inside the organization, because you see that the world changing so fast that the organization have to adapt to those changes, even if they're not growing so fast as we are. We have to kind of have this mindset of change.
As we discussed, you've grown very rapidly, and again with a remote first culture. Are there maybe 2 or 3 things that you wish you had done differently, looking back? Some of the lessons that you learned the hard way?
You mean lessons in terms of the growth of the company, or?
Well, both in terms of the growth of the company and scaling up that culture and that sense of belonging from early on to where you are today.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons for me is that you have to be very, very proactive, and you have to be very conscious about the culture and what you're kind of proactively building. So what I always try to kind of repeat and keep in mind is that culture is not something that happens by just by itself. Like, it's not something that kind of grow. We put people together in the same room or the same organization, and then we have a culture. Like, it's something that you have to be very proactive about, and what we try to say to everybody who joins, that they're also, like, every single person in the organization is responsible for the culture. Like, it's not my responsibility, it's not the responsibility of the upper management or HR. It's everybody, every single person's responsibility to keep, to evolve, and to kind of be proactive about who we are and how do we want to certain decisions, what are our values, what's our vision, where we're going, and we talk about it a lot inside the organization. I think this is one of the biggest lessons I have, is that you have to be very conscious about it and think about it all the time, especially in this kind of fast-growing environment where it's very, very easy to forget about it and just focus on the growth and focus on the revenue and focus on numbers.
You have remote employees. So how many employees do you have from different countries?
Right. So currently our whole team is based out of Poland. So we have offices in 7 different cities around Poland. Okay. There are people who are not native Polish. We have people who don't speak Polish, expats and people from different countries that work with us. But I think that we treat some of our clients as well as part of our kind of extended team. And this extended team is right now, it's kind of truly global. So we have clients pretty much all over the world. US, where I'm at, West Coast, where I'm today, East Coast, and Europe, pretty much all over Europe, Germany, UK, Switzerland, France, as well as Middle East, also pretty much all over the region. So our clients are spread out across the whole globe, and we kind of work with them. We pull them into all our tools. Most of our clients are on our Slack, and we kind of help them build certain products. So we treat our clients as part of the extended teams of the project that we're building. So I would say that our kind of extended team is right now very much all over the world.
Do you have a traditional HR team, or are you more focused on a cross-functional collaboration around truly the employee experience from people from maybe customer experience, operations, marketing, or is it more traditional HR?
So we've built like the more traditional HR team fairly late, probably a little bit too late. I think we should have started thinking about this a little bit earlier. But I think compared to more traditional organizations, we definitely had and still have a more emphasis on having this culture built within the particular teams, so product teams or customer acquisition teams, or all the teams that we have in place. We kind of we hope that the leadership within those teams would be somebody who's kind of mostly responsible for our for the more traditional HR related responsibilities. But we found that having a separate team that kind of supports those leaders is also very, very important. So now we have a kind of a more traditional HR team that's kind of, we treat them as a support for our leaders. We are currently more than 100 leadership positions within the organization. So those folks would help their leaders, be as productive, as good in the leadership and develop their leadership skills. So those are kind of like a support positions to the leadership team.
Why do you believe that major organizations should prioritize recruiting engineers versus MBAs?
Well, I think it's maybe a little bit of a simplification. I think what we really need is finding people who want to build or who want to somehow associate with whatever vision the company has. So we have certain well-defined vision and values, and the people we are looking for are people who are excited about this, who are excited about working within this environment. And I think some of the skills, and it's kind of it's both for engineering and for more of a management positions. I think skills is something that you can learn. But sometimes the culture or the way or the kind of soft skills that people have or don't have are a little bit harder to acquire. So we try to screen based on the passion, based on the maybe potential, rather than the hard skills, because we believe that this is something that you can kind of learn over time, while it's a little bit harder to teach or to somehow ignite passion about something that we're doing as an organization.
So talking about training people, one of the challenges again with a remote first workforce is how to build a professional developments and training program so that everybody can, or not everybody, but those interested or those who actually needs to develop some of their skills can do that. So it's much, the common thinking is it's much easier to do this when everybody's in the office versus remotely, which I don't necessarily agree with. What are some of the things that you do around training and development and even coaching for your managers down to their team members to create that culture of collaboration, mentorship, coaching, and personal growth?
Mm-hmm. I think, again, there are a lot of challenges in being a remote company, but I would say that learning and development is, in my mind at least, is probably not one of them. I think there's so many tools right now, and there's so many resources to be able to have a kind of a more of a e-learning or blended learning approach to the development, that we found that actually it's sometimes even a little bit easier to build some kind of a program that helps people develop those skills kind of online on again, it's kind of a blended environment when there's a part of it that's kind of a face-to-face and we meet for maybe a day, and then the rest is being done online. That we haven't found this being a big challenge, a big problem for us to help people build those skills. And I think in some way we might have an advantage because in the technology space specifically, there's just so much content, there's just so much tools to be able to learn that, which might not be the case in some other kind of industries. But specifically in technology, I think it hasn't been an issue for us.
Yes, I would agree with that. Before we conclude our conversation today, let me ask you some fun and more personal questions. Mm-hmm. If you were to invite a historical figure or someone famous to dinner, who would you pick and why?
Those are always kind of tough questions. I think it's, especially when you're looking at the the whole history of the universe, and then to be able to choose one person. I think there's people I learned a lot from are people from other areas of work, or so I definitely would probably enjoy dinner with people who are politicians and leaders in those very turbulent times of change and sometimes even conflict. So I think from the top of my mind, I'll probably say Nelson Mandela as somebody who was able to work through a big conflict, a big change in their community, and those would be my pick.
What profession other than your own right now as a CEO of Netguru would you like to attempt? If you were to do something completely different.
I'm very excited about anything that's connected with leadership, and it doesn't have to be a CEO or a kind of business related leadership position. But I would definitely be very interested in any leadership opportunities even outside of business. I'll probably look at non-profit and NGOs or kind of some kind of governmental public positions. It would be something that I will probably look into.
Okay, you travel quite a bit. What is your favorite city?
I love coming back to London. Because of the diversity of food, restaurants, cultural options. There's just pretty much whatever you need, you can get, and you can find and experience in this city. So you kind of don't have to travel as much when you're based there or when you're based in London, because you can kind of experience different culture in one city.
What things bothers you the most, or that you miss the most when you travel?
Well, I think travel, especially across time zones, can be tiring, and this is the biggest challenge. I love to travel. I love to go and visit, our clients. I love to visit and kind of experience different cultures. But the downside is obviously, if you do too much of it, it's very tiring, and the jet lags and the flights and delays are sometimes a little bit annoying.
It's not always as sexy as what people may think.
I think it can be, but you have to be very. On one hand, you have to be very lucky, and on the other hand, you have to structure it in a way that it's not killing you.
Yeah. What is your favorite word?
I would say, coming back to what I was talking about in our organization, I think that the word that we continue to repeat, and I do feel like it's one of my favorite ones, is change. I think a lot of stuff is changing, and we have to be ready for change always.
What is your least favorite word?
Probably things like, or maybe more of expression than a word. Is this can't be done, or it's impossible, or we never going to be able to do that. This kind of a approach to challenges.
What's the way for our listeners to follow you and Netguru on social media?
So I think both myself and we as an organization, we are most active on LinkedIn. So if you look us up on LinkedIn, Netguru or myself, this is probably where we put in most of our content. We're also on Instagram, but that's probably a little more of a lifestyle channel for us. So definitely in terms of content and being able to follow what we do and what's happening, and what we're doing is that I'll recommend LinkedIn.
Okay, and we'll share those links on our podcast notes as well. Any last word of wisdom or advice for our listeners?
Well, I think, we were talking a lot about remote work. I would definitely encourage everybody who's part of the organization or who's leading an organization that has not been able to create a remote friendly program to try it. I think there's a lot of resources online how to do that, how to try and how to test it. I think there's a big push from people that want to have this opportunity, and I think there's going to be more and more pressure on organizations, and people would be voting with their feet and going to organizations that are ready to be more flexible in this. And I would definitely encourage everybody to look into it.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Wiktor, for being with us today. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for tuning in to the EX Podcast. If you want to learn more, visit our website at expodcast.com. If you want to find out more about our next conferences, go to exsummit.com. Finally, you can also find my manifesto on business to employee or B2E branding at b2ebranding.co. See you next week.